District and the City of Davis, so welcome everyone. I see that all of my colleagues are here, so we need to have a roll call. First order of business today is to open it up for general public comment. We allow 2 minutes for any member of the public who wishes to address us on a matter that is not on our agenda to address us. And I do not see anyone present for public comment. So we will move on to our next item of business, which is to approve the May 21st minutes from our prior meeting. Does anyone have any corrections to make? No corrections? Would someone like to make a motion for approval?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you. Second. And a second. So moved by Trustee Moon and second by Councilmember Partida. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. The minutes are unanimously approved. Very good. So we turn over to City and District Communications, and I will turn first to our new City Manager, Danielle Dunstan.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and good evening, Vice Mayor Neville, Councilmember Partida, Board President D'Annunzio, and Trustee Moon. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. It is my 3rd week on the job. And as you can imagine, I'm getting up to speed on all things Davis. And we don't have too many announcements today, but I did want to remind folks that Neighbors Night, Davis Neighbors Night Out, is this Sunday, October 5th, from 4 to 7, and we're expecting over 100 neighborhood parties, and I will be out and about visiting as many that I can get to and enjoying all that Davis has to offer. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Matt.
Thanks. We've started the school year about a month in. We welcomed a little over 8,250 students this year. That's been a good start to the school year. I think probably our most normal since the pandemic in almost every way. So it's been nice to get back to normal. We have most of our jobs filled, and things are going pretty well across the district.
Thank you, Superintendent Best. So now we're turning to our discussion items, and we have basically a series of 4 items. And I know we tend to kind of move through things fairly informally here, but I think Superintendent Best, I'll just have you kind of start off with facilities, and then we'll just kind of roll through them all. And if anyone member of the public shows up, we'll certainly stop and take public comment after each segment, but I don't see anyone present just yet.
Yeah, I can start on the DJ USD updates for facilities and then hand it over to city staff. So on our end, we completed our last significant bond-funded project with the completion of our aquatic center, which is open and operational. We had our first several water polo matches here the last few weeks, and finishing out the last of our bond projects, which are much smaller. We updated the sound system at the stadium and are doing a few other projects of that nature around the district. And really moving our attention to deferred maintenance projects all throughout the district. That's really it for us on the facility side.
Thank you, Ryan.
So, good afternoon, I'm Ryan Chapman, I'm the Director of Public Works, Engineering and Transportation for the City of Davis. And I do have some CIP updates I wanted to cover. And the first one is the Anderson Road Chavez Elementary School improvements. This project takes a student drop-off zone and moves it onto the campus and makes some additional street improvements. We had a meeting with the public a couple weeks back, and based on some feedback, extensive feedback we received in that meeting, we're actually working on some design revisions. And we'll be going back to the community with an additional update and additional feedback once we've completed those design revisions. We're still anticipating construction to be summer of 2027. I did have a contract out to do restriping throughout the city at various locations. Unfortunately, we received 1 bid on that project, and it was not from a pre-qualified bidder, so we're going to be asking the council to deem it non-responsive. We will be rebidding that in the winter, and that will improve striping around 3 schools in particular, Holmes, Willett, and Emerson. And then finally, the 14th Street repaving project between Walk and F, that includes pedestrian safety improvements and signal changes at 14th and F. Construction will hopefully be starting this spring. We're working through final grant agreement to secure the last of the funding for that project. bulk of the work will be done during the summer with the repaving and things that would be most disruptive to both North Davis Elementary and the senior high school. But there will be some additional concrete work, procuring of materials for some signal modifications and so forth over the end of the school year. That's my update, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Ryan? No?
I have a quick question, Ryan.
Yes.
So when we talk about restriping, you know, around the schools, that makes a lot of sense. Is there other restriping projects that are going to be happening in the city?
Yeah, so this one project was actually going to cover a lot of materials, areas near the schools, and just another list of requests we received to restripe roads, sidewalks, and crosswalks, and other types of pavement markings. Like I said, we had one consultant, or one bidder, one contractor that came in on it. We have to reject them because they're not pre-qualified. I'm also going to have to look at the contract that came in quite a bit higher than what we could afford. So part of the time we're going to take before we rebid this is to review our contract specifications and see what we can do to maximize the amount of striping we get with the funds we have.
Thank you.
Can you talk for a moment about the Anderson Corridor project? And obviously it's been in the works for some time. What are the sort of critical milestones and potential barriers between now and the summer of '27 when we anticipate being able to move forward?
I think the big concern is budget. Right now, the cost estimates are coming in higher than what we have budgeted. We do have substantial grant resources on this and contributions from both the district and the city. But with the uncertainty in costs that we're seeing and just the availability of local funds, that is probably the biggest concern.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I had a question about the Anderson corridor. I'm trying to recall just what stretch of the corridor it encompasses.
It's Amherst to the south, north to Villanova. So it's the area in front of the school, and it includes reducing a portion of the northern part down from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, keeping the two-way left turn lane, moving the school student drop-off on the campus, and modifications to the signal at Rutgers.
Okay, perfect. And then just out of curiosity, when the student drop-off moves into that campus area, where will the teachers employees still be parking there as well?
That's part of what we received the feedback on, and what we're working on with the project is trying to find a way to preserve those parking spaces for the teachers and the employees. We are looking at a couple options that would both be on-site as well as trying to create a preferential parking zone on the street, where we could essentially, for employees of the district, create the possibility of on-street parking. Nothing's been decided yet. We're still working through our options to see what's feasible, but those are the two ideas that are being kicked around at the moment.
Thank you.
So if you're reducing down to 2 lanes, what happens with the rest of that space? Is that going to become more bike?
Yeah, bike parking, not parking, it's going to be buffered bike lanes. They're going to be a little bit wider. Where we can, we're going to be looking at doing parking protected bike lanes. So it would be sidewalk, bike lane, parking, automobile lane. There's a number of spots where we've got a lot of driveways, but that's not going to be feasible. But the idea is to create those larger, more enhanced bike lanes.
Okay, all right. I don't know, I thought that when you reduce the lanes, that it was because you were doing the drop-off, the drop-off for the students, that there would be like a, sort of like a, you know, one of those little, what do they call it? Like one of those. Yes, like where the buses come in and drop folks off.
We're not doing the turnout in the right-of-way that's going to be on school property in the current parking lot. My understanding is there are requirements from the state that those drop-offs should be brought on the campus whenever possible.
It would be more like a drop-off at Montgomery, where there's, you know, come all the way on
Yes.
to campus with a protected drop-off and then parking as well.
Okay, all right.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Right. then we turn back to a DJUSD update on that?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about our enrollment and boundary outreach process first. I think point number one, you guys have heard me say this before, we've got declining enrollment. That's one of the drivers for the community conversation that we engaged in all of last year. The big news is we're expected to decline by about 1,000 students over the course of the next decade. From 2019, when this decline really started in terms of total enrollment, we are likely to lose around 800 elementary students between 2019 and 2034, and about 300 junior high students that same window of time. It's rolling up from our primary grades and into the middle schools. And, this is sort of the graphic that seems to resonate most with folks, just that we've got a cohort of around 700 seniors that graduated with Trustee D'Annunzio and I's, our kids graduated this last year. There's about 700 graduates in the district, about 450 kindergartners joining the district this fall. So as that smaller cohort rolls forward, we're going to continue to see declining enrollment. And I think as you all know, we've got a challenge because we know we've got this declining enrollment trend, and when we see new housing in Davis, it does generate new students for the district. And given that there are two potential housing projects on the horizon, the passage or failure of those projects will have a significant impact on what we need to do. So we are engaging in a process of worst case planning because that takes, quite frankly, the most time and is the most complex. And for us, when we think about what the worst case means, is it's the closure of between 1 and 3 schools, 2 elementaries and likely a junior high over that 10-year window. And so our board, as you know, talked a lot about this last fall and winter. We went out into the community and did more than 60 community meetings about district enrollment. And we are entering what we're calling the community process phase this fall. So in early November, we are going to start community vetting of a couple of concepts that address that projected decline in enrollment over the course of the next decade. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I will say that in November, it's going to start getting hard in Davis Joint Unified and throughout the town because we're going to be talking about specific school closures over this next window of time. The good news is our board does not anticipate making a decision until the spring of 2027 with an implementation in the 28-29 school year. So we'll make a decision in fall of 27. Hopefully we'll know the outcome of 2 prospective development votes, and we'll have essentially a year of planning. The 27-28 school year will be a year of implementation. We may need to construct facilities, do renovations, move things around, and then we would actuate whatever the change is in the fall of 28-29. I think the next big thing that I would say is that as we've talked with superintendents and school boards around the state that are going through a similar thing, the one thing I hear regularly from them is if you have the time, take it. Don't put your head in the stand and think that it's going to get better because this is not a problem we can recruit our way out of or bring in students from outside that's going to help us recover from this challenge over the course of the next decade. So we're taking this sort of slow and transparent and deliberate, thoughtful approach. It started last year. We'll sort of rise in intensity over the next 18 months, and we hope to make a decision given the best information that we have at the time, and then time to implement. Most districts wait too long, and they're in such financial distress that they have to make snap decisions, and frequently those aren't the best in the long run. So we all know that the best decisions in Davis are made when we involve our full community and we take time to think and discuss and talk, and that's what we intend to do here over the course of the next year. Trustees, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
You know, I do think that it has already been a very deliberate process and it will continue to be, and that's the right pace. And I think that some fiscal discipline that the district has applied over the last several years gives us the luxury of a little bit of time, but not a lot of time. So we have a little more wiggle room than we might have a few years ago to let it play out, but not a lot. And I do think, Matt mentioned it, I'll just be even more blunt. We get together with colleagues from districts that have gone through this, and it's a very challenging process for the community. Even if you're open and transparent, people are impacted by this. And so we anticipate and appreciate community engagement, which will be great, but it's going to be a hard conversation for our community.
Questions?
So can you explain a little bit about why closing schools is bad? And I know that sounds like an obvious thing, but I do get from community members sometimes, when I'm explaining to them about why we need more housing and bring up this fact that we'll have to close schools, and that there are folks who feel like, well, we don't need that many schools, and it doesn't, then what is the harm in closing schools? I can think of a few, but I'm sure that you have more.
Yeah, I will say, I think this notion of right sizing, right, is one that we hear regularly also. And I think that it's sort of a misnomer, right? What's the right size? Because I think there's a couple things, when I think about a closure that we've been through, we only had one school closure in our district's history, and it was very painful. I still have staff that tell me that was one of the worst experiences of their professional career. We've met with the trustees at the time, and the community task force that was tasked with that work. So I think number one is we've got generations of students that attend these schools. From our newest school at Putwin, we've got grandparents that live in the community where their children went there and their grandchildren are now attending, right? So that there's a legacy of Davis schools that many community members have appreciated and loved. I think most families have the strongest affinity to their elementary schools, right? That's the place where parents and students feel the most connected. Once parents reach junior high and high school, you're maybe a little less welcome and less wanted by your children on campus, but there's a strong affinity to elementary campuses. And I think from the learning, the teaching and learning perspective, the period during which you are declining and then you contract, things are worse. Because when you are, just the economics of decline, you can only cut about 40 cents to the dollar of your lost revenue, right? So that other 60 cents gets carried by the rest of the students, right? You have to make reductions for which they are more intense for the remaining students, right? And then you make this sort of shift down, you close a school, and then during that window, you are maximizing your school enrollment. So so if you go to 7 schools, those 7 schools are gonna be really full until you decline so much that you need to make the next economic decision, and then your schools are really full again. So I think you go through this sort of, the contractions look more like stair steps instead of a linear curve. And I think those contractions are painful for the community, they're painful for students and staff as well, because there's all that disruption and displacement that we know stability is important for student learning and teaching. So I would say those are the big ones. I don't know, Trustee, if there's ones you want to add as well.
I would add that in talking to the community, people like, we're a community that has both magnet schools, destination schools, and neighborhood schools. And the families that participate in the neighborhood school really appreciate having a neighborhood school that they can walk to or bike to. And that, feels like it's part of their small community. And I agree with Matt, it's very much at the elementary, it's much less at the junior high. And of course, we really only have one high school, one core high school. And so that's that loss of that direct community asset. I've heard many members say, hey, I bought my house across the street from the school because I want to be able to walk my child to school every day. When you lose that, that's a big deal.
Just one question for you, Superintendent. I know when we talked about it last, you were seeing statewide, we were seeing this trend where places where housing is the least affordable, we're losing students. In places where housing is the most affordable, we're seeing actual increases. Is that still happening?
Yeah, so we've sort of got an interesting phenomenon here in Davis. Our decline started much earlier than the rest of the state. When you look at this chart, in the 2010s, really after Measure J came into effect, we started to see a decline in resident students, and those numbers were backfilled by non-resident students, generally from Woodland, West Sacramento, Dixon, our immediate neighbors. And right now we have a little over 1,300 non-resident students enrolled in the district. So I think that sort of has masked this decline for our district. Really, in about 2018, we started to see a decline across the state, and it's across the state. It's more intense in some regions. Napa and Sonoma counties, Los Angeles County are seeing, 15 to 20% decline in the number of students over this 10-year window. Interestingly, Yolo County, number of students residing in Yolo County is very stable. And part of that is because we've got housing development taking place in Woodland and West Sacramento that is keeping that overall number of student population stable despite declining birth rates. And we know this because we are declining in resident populations. Woodland and West Sacramento are staying pretty stable in terms of overall student enrollment, but we're siphoning off a certain percentage of their students to Davis because their parents work here at the university, the district, the city, and other employers in town.
Thank you for that sobering update. So we're going to turn to workforce housing now.
Yeah, something a little more exciting. So I think we have been hearing from our staff for many years that housing is not affordable, especially on a public servant salary. And we're seeing those numbers play out in terms of the number of employees that reside within the district's boundaries. And many of those 1,300 non-resident students are students of our staff who are bringing they live in Woodland, West Sacramento, and Dixon, and they're bringing their students to Davis for school and coming for work. So one of the things that we have been exploring is this idea of creating workforce housing. Our district was part of CSBA, California School Boards Association's latest cohort to explore and learn about workforce housing. We visited workforce housing projects in public education throughout the state, and that's really led us to this concept. As part of that cohort, we were paired with an architect that helped us to formulate this initial design. As part of our work, we analyzed how far our staff are from the sort of affordability factor, and most folks think you should have your rent or housing cost should be 40% or less of your income. For most of our average certificated employees or average classified employees, we're far away from that reality. So that necessitates either a second income or some other mechanism, doubling up of families in order to reside in Davis. So last spring, we surveyed our staff about how many of you might be interested in workforce housing, living in a project that Davis Joint Unified constructed and operates. And about 76% of all the employees surveyed said they would be interested. And that number was even higher for those folks in their first 5 years on the job. 84% of those folks that have been with us 5 years or less. We are in the process today, actually our latest survey closes, and these numbers are even higher. Folks who are interested in housing, and again, that number is even higher for those folks in their first 5 years, early career folks. So as we think about our objectives, we want to have housing that's available below market rate, somewhere in the 30 to 50% below market rate is our target, that meets the needs and desires of our employees in terms of its location, size, amenities, et cetera, and helps to continue a growth in overall student enrollment in Davis. So what that means for us is we want to see net new housing as opposed to the district purchase existing housing and convert it into workforce housing. Our preliminary goal is to serve 20% of our employees. We have a little over 1,000 permanent employees. about 500 folks who are like coaches and substitutes and those sorts of things, but we're really looking to serve about 200 of our permanent employees. Through our work with CSBA, we've identified the Harper Junior High School site as the preferred location to build this project. For those of you that are familiar with the Harper site, currently the south side of the campus is a field, an open field. We are looking to move all of our athletic fields from the eastern side of campus to the south side of campus. And this project would run north-south from Mason Boulevard to the housing community on the south side. We're looking at about a 12-acre project, and that project would essentially require the moving of those sports fields, as noted here in the top left, to that south side of the campus. That would be essentially, call that phase 0. We would then need to start constructing the infrastructure. So there's going to need to be a road, public utilities, all of that sort of stuff. And then our first phase, we're looking at townhomes or single-family homes at the southern edge of campus. I'll talk a little bit about density here in a minute. The middle segment, call that phase 2A and 2B, is garden apartments. This is similar to what you might see at the Bridge District in West Sacramento. And then closest to Mace Boulevard is multifamily housing. It's going to be more like a traditional apartment complex. As we start to think about the density, we want to have an overall density that's more significant than you would see if you just had single-family housing throughout. But this first phase density is in that 10 to 12 units, and this would yield about 48 units in phase 1. All of these phases we think are about $30 to $35 million in terms of budget. And you can see some pictures of what that might look like. The density in phase 2 goes up to around 20 units per acre. And we think this is going to yield somewhere between 80 and 100 total units. Again, you can see some types of garden apartments there at the bottom. And then finally, the most dense is going to be this multifamily podium level construction, where we have about 40 units per acre. And this will likely be our most expensive component of the project. It will have the most units, and that brings our total site yield to right around 220. We're still in the concept phase, getting clear about how many units, how many bedrooms, what sort of amenities we want to have, and all of that's going to have an impact on yield. We are in the midst of a feasibility study. We've partnered with UCLA's City Lab, which is really one of its, first of its kind sort of partnership. UCLA City Lab is really the research driver for all of the workforce housing legislation that is currently on the books. They are really interested in walking with us through the course of this project from its inception to completion. Most research institutions, they look backwards to see what worked and what didn't. And it's been really fascinating so far to be in this journey together, them giving us advice. We've also partnered with Brookwood Partners, which is a development firm that's done quite a bit of workforce housing work. So the three of us are essentially partnered together to do a feasibility study. We're in the process right now of doing the environmental work on campus. We're going to be continuing to refine that conceptual design. I think the biggest question is around budget. What are the mechanisms by which we pay for this thing? And then how do we bring it to fruition over the coming years? That will certainly involve you all as we work through the sort of city-district connection as we move this project forward. And that's it. Any questions? Joe and Elizabeth, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I'd just say this isn't pie in the sky. We've been working on this for 3 years. The board is pretty clear. We're committed to doing this. It's critical for our employees. It's critical for our ability to manage being a low-funded district. We've heard from our teachers and from our families that having educators that live in town is a huge benefit for both the educators and for all of our families. This is, we're moving forward with great determination on this. It's the one thing I've had.
So how is it that you are going to have this targeted to your workforce?
Yeah, so there's several laws that have been passed that allow us to do that. So if we have a certain density requirement and we meet a maximum height requirement and we have an affordability factor in relation to our the housing prices that in the market in our town and our salaries, we can offer the units to our staff. If we don't fill them with our staff, it gets open to other public employees, first within the city and then within the county. So I think as we move forward in this project, as we get closer to completion, we'll need to be talking about how that priority system works and how that might play out if we can't fill the units over time.
Okay, and so they're not like your typical low-income housing where you partner with a low income.
These are not going to be deed restricted
Okay.
units. And part of one of the things that we've seen lots of districts that do what we consider typical low income, where they get a tax credit and they hand over the project to a developer that builds it and runs it for some number of years and then potentially hands it back to you once the financing term is done. When that happens, you lose control of the sort of income reality. And what we found from districts throughout the state is that many, many staff made too much money. And we think that will be the case here too. We saw many of these workforce housing projects that did not house district staff because there wasn't enough interest of folks who met the income requirements, and therefore it opened, in those cases, to the public, essentially. So if we want to meet the needs of our staff, we're going to have to control the project, which also means we have to finance the project ourselves. That's the trade-off. So when you do a tax credit program, you don't front any of the cash, right? And that's why it's attractive to a lot of districts, and it's harder to meet your objectives of housing your staff.
Thank you.
And also just to follow up on Gloria's question about this ability to target for your workforce, that's an ENCODE thing, right? So it's very specific to schools and their workforce, yeah.
That's exactly right. It's really the only carve-out where you can work around the Fair Housing Acts.
Interesting. Well, thank you for that. Very good. So now turning to the update on federal cuts to education.
Yeah, so right now, we are not anticipating any cuts to education from the current projected federal budget. There's a shutdown that's now a few hours into effect. Most education-related funding is forward funded, so we don't expect a shutdown to impact that. There's a fair amount of uncertainty, is probably the right word, in our federal government, so whether that actually comes to fruition may be another question. The only place that we anticipate some delay is in student nutrition services. So what is the department? Department of Agriculture, I think, right? That manages the USDA, yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. They have reserves to cover reimbursement for national meal programs through October. So if the stoppage goes more than 30 or so days, that will delay the reimbursements. The way it works now is we already front the cash and then get reimbursed. So we would really have to see the stoppage go into November to feel any impacts on our cash flow. We, because of universal meals, and we've been just serving many, many, many more meals, we do have a healthy reserve in our school nutrition fund currently. So we can weather many months of reimbursement delay if that's the case.
Any questions? Do you have more questions or thoughts? I guess just initially, some of the proposed cuts were just staggering. So it looks like many of those did not take place, which is maybe one small glimmer of light.
Yeah, and I think the other part is we don't qualify for much federal funding.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Such
it's
a
what,
small part.
less than 7% of our budget, which 7% is a meaningful number, but it's not.
And the bulk of that is related to special education.
So that's actually what I was gonna ask about was, because I know that that is like where all of that concentration of concern was at.
That's right.
And so even with like the reorganization of the Department of Education, did you have any fallout from that?
We have relatively little contact with the Department of Education. So response times are much slower. If you've got a question, but most of our federal programs have been longstanding and well-established, so there's not a lot of communication. I would say the place where we have seen the most challenge in terms of communication is with our Native American education program. It's relatively small anyway, the federal department and our department. And there's a lot of rules and regulations about the administration of it, so just getting timely answers has been a challenge.
And so your Title I funding hasn't been reduced?
No.
It's still the same formula?
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
Good news.
Yeah, if we
For
can
now, yeah.
call anything from that.
I would call it the absence of bad news,
Yes.
Vice Mayor.
Yes. All right, well, with that, so we're finished with our discussion items. Are there any announcements or comments from any of the trustees you'd like to share?
I just want to announce that we have the Village Feast coming up on October 12th. It's going to be taking place at Great Bear Laundry this year. And please come on out and enjoy some good food, good wine, conversation, and support our farm to schools.
So I have one announcement. So the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at UC Davis is hosting a panel of female legislators. 3 names that will be quite familiar to everyone in this room: Lois Wolk, Marika Yamada, and Helen Thompson, on October 21st at 5:30 in Alumni Center on the UC Davis campus. So I'll be moderating the panel, and we're going to talk about starting at the community level and going all the way through to the state legislature, the assembly, and the Senate, careers and thinking about having positive impact and being change makers. So the event is free and open to the public, but does require an RSVP. I'll make sure, I think I already sent it to Barbara Archer at the city, but I'll make sure that that information is available, because we will, it's free, but it will sell out. It will run out.
Anything from you? No one else. It's very good. Yeah, I wish we didn't have a council meeting that night when I saw that date, but we didn't, unfortunately. So our next meeting is on November 19th. And with that, we are adjourned. Good, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.